From boardrooms to the White House and beyond, McKinsey's influence in business is virtually unparalleled.
It is quite possibly the most influential private institution on the planet.
An organization has a problem that they cannot solve with their internal resources. That's the most classic way that McKinsey is brought in.
I have had a lot of exposure to firms with a high opinion of themselves. McKinsey takes the cake.
Its alumni control some of the largest and most powerful companies in the world, and have also been involved in some of corporate America's most sensational scandals. Now, is the company having a moment of reckoning?
One of the world's most storied and respected management consulting firms is finding itself in the subject of critical media scrutiny.
Or will it somehow continue to fly below the radar? McKinsey was founded in 1926 by James O. McKinsey. He was a professor at the University of Chicago and an expert in management accounting. The firm began advising companies locally and slowly opening up offices in major urban hubs around the country. By the 1950s, the firm was assisting the White House with staffing organization, which according to the company would lead to the creation of the Chief of Staff role. In 1970, McKinsey helped create the barcode. Yes, that barcode, with the Uniform Grocery Product Code Council. It's all about solving the most pressing and complicated business problems.
First of all, people who go to work for McKinsey tend to be elite individuals in terms of their intellectual ability, business acumen, drive, ability to think creatively. Plenty of people have said that going to McKinsey is like getting the PhD on top of your MBA, but in a much more applied way than an academic way.
The company touts more than 30 Rhodes Scholars on its staff and at least 6 Olympians.
The way I sketched it out in the book, there are 3 main ingredients: fact-based, hypothesis-driven, and structured. It's not so much what the specific structure is, but the fact that there is a structure and it's logical and coherent. And it drives the problem-solving process in terms of what is the problem, how do we scope it out, break it into its constituent elements, go about getting the data, all the way down to how do we then present it to the client in a way that will enable them to implement the changes that McKinsey might be recommending.
The experience, the tools, and the way to think to try to bring this information, these questions, this data that we were gathering to a level such that you can draw a conclusion. And I think at McKinsey what you learn is to be able to move really up and down the hierarchy, up and down the problems, up and down the levels of thinking. And I think this is extremely different when you compare to other people who didn't have the chance to go through this experience.
McKinsey is not the only firm offering consulting services like these. It has serious competition, like Bain & Company and the Boston Consulting Group. But out of the big 3, as they're called, McKinsey is the leader when it comes to management consulting revenues, according to ALM Intelligence.
They're still quite prominent from a revenue standpoint. They're also prominent from a reputation standpoint, but when you really look at consulting today, they're not as prominent as the big 4 accounting firms. Deloitte, PwC, and EY and KPMG, they're actually the largest consulting firms.
But of course, it's also about who you know.
Certainly when I was there, McKinsey was famous for having decades-long relationships with any number of Fortune 500 companies. They were on tap for the senior executives.
You always think with McKinsey about strategy, but you work with people, which later I used a lot at Solar Impulse. Solar Impulse was a project which was considered impossible by the aviation industry. We wanted to build an airplane which was bigger than a 747 in terms of wingspan, but with the weight of a car. And I got out of my time at McKinsey, essentially working with teams, the way to organize these people and to make them understand where they could go, how they could go there, and develop the right empowerment.
There's no point not to hire McKinsey if you can afford it, because it's a SWAT team of analysts that is at your beck and call. They traffic in influence, industry intelligence, helping executives make a decision they've already made by backfilling a report. It's basically a firm that will come into the office and say, what do you want us to do?
The nature of the role does not necessarily make the consultants at McKinsey the most popular people.
Their job is to help organizations become as efficient and effective as possible and to complete their own missions. It is simply a fact of life. It's not necessarily pleasant. And that's why sometimes when consultants, whether it's McKinsey or anybody else, comes in, they can be viewed not particularly favorably by the people in the organization themselves. That certainly was part of my experience. In many ways, it's management bringing them in to do it so they don't have to.
The people who work there, they do very well. They don't make hedge fund money, but they're making more than most of the people you know.
Nobody brings McKinsey in because they've got the world, in their hands.
And the firm gets paid handsomely for its services.
Generally, the fee rates are closely guarded, and they are all over the map. And at the same time, they can be quite well known. The government actually publishes the fee rates for McKinsey and others. The inside joke in the industry is you hire McKinsey and it's $250,000 a week for a team.
However, consulting pay structures have evolved.
Alternative fee structures, results-based fees, or taking a stake in the client, an equity stake, something like that. It's very attractive for clients when they hear that and they pay a smaller upfront fee. It's also a way to get more bang out of the project than just a straight time and materials.
The forces that McKinsey stands for, which are efficiency and rationality, it's hard to have a problem with those on their face, who votes for inefficiency. But I think that we have to decide what our values are. What do we want as a people? And is efficiency our top priority?
Perhaps even more infamous than the company's work itself is its alumni network.
Many years after I left McKinsey, I was still talking about we and not about they.
People that have worked at McKinsey run the gamut of corporate leadership. Big names include the likes of Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, James Gorman, CEO of Morgan Stanley, Jørgen Knudstrup, chairman and former CEO of the Lego Group, and Sheryl Sandberg, the chief operating officer of Facebook.
Yeah, McKinsey's everywhere. And they have built a machine that sort of, the alumni interaction with the current firm sort of feeds itself in a constant virtuous circle of fees and engagements. It's kind of stunning to behold.
And the influence extends into politics. Republican Senators Tom Cotton and Ben Sasse have both either worked for or advised McKinsey briefly. Chelsea Clinton also did a stint with the firm, as did Susan Rice, Obama's national security advisor, and Democratic Mayor of South Bend, Indiana, Pete Buttigieg, who's running for president. McKinsey is a private company, so it doesn't regularly disclose sales or profits. It's even impossible to find a complete list of their clients, although McKinsey told CNBC that it serves more than 90 of the top 100 companies worldwide. Duff McDonald lists AT&T, General Motors, and IBM, just to name a few. He also reports praise from Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan Chase, all in his book, The Firm.
This is a firm that has a historical policy of not disclosing anything about what they do to anybody. One of the most difficult things to find is satisfied McKinsey clients. Because what McKinsey does is it sells credit for its ideas. If you're the CEO of a company and hire them, you don't want them running around saying, we told them to make that acquisition. That was us, that was us. They take no credit, they take no blame. That is also a brilliant part of their business model. For years, they claimed they were only in the advice business, and what their clients did with their advice was up to them. I think that's a little less defensible than they'd like you to think.
McKinsey's global footprint is expanding. It tells CNBC it's in 133 cities across 66 countries around the world, with about 17,000 consultants. While 75% of the firm's business was in what they call core management consulting 15 years ago, today it's only about a quarter of their business, as McKinsey is expanding into technology, data analytics and visualization, artificial intelligence, and industrial design.
You bring in a McKinsey because they are change agents. Think about it this way. Consultants have always been one step ahead of their clients. That's how they sold themselves. More and more companies are saying, well, we don't really need consultants to help us in the big picture. We need them in just these very tactical little areas. And those kinds of projects are not the kind that can sustain organizations the size of McKinsey. You got to feed the beast. And that's why they got to change their business.
They are everywhere in DC and abroad also. You know, McKinsey's very influential in Western Europe. They have been for half a century, whether that's England or Germany or elsewhere. But also some recent New York Times reporting has shown that they are very involved with China, a lot of state-owned enterprises, Saudi Arabia, South Africa is a great example.
They have maintained their quality, and for the most part, and you can always point to the failings of an organization, but they've mostly maintained their integrity. And they've maintained their relationships long-term with major industrial companies and financial companies while trying as much as possible to move into spaces filled by new industries.
Will McKinsey's secretive, behind-the-scenes business model persist in this more transparent world of the digital economy? Only time will tell.
One of the first articles that covered us when I joined the firm was the McKinsey mystique. And I think there was a period of time when mystique was a good thing. Mystique's not a good thing anymore. People don't like secrecy, and we have to change with that.